Thank you, Mr. Chairman. St. Louis and I are here today to discuss climate, the environment, and the very air we breathe, not just gas stoves. I wish my Republican colleagues were as concerned about Black and brown communities on the front lines of our climate crisis as they are about an appliance. This proposed rule is not a ban on gas stoves. This proposed rule is not a ban on gas stoves. We are regulating indoor air pollution. The climate crisis is happening all around us, and Republican inaction is costing us lives. As lawmakers, we have a moral obligation to prioritize the health and well-being of every person across our country. I represent a community where the threat of climate pollution comes from both inside and outside our homes. In St. Louis City, Black children are twice as likely to test positive for lead in their blood than white children. St. Louis ranks among the highest across our country for rates of asthma, with rates significantly higher for Black residents than white residents. I can only imagine the number of my constituents who are unknowingly being poisoned by their gas stove in the state that it is without this proposed rule being in effect, especially young children, our elders, and people with disabilities who are disproportionately at risk for contracting respiratory illnesses. Let's not forget that many of these gas stoves are not owned by the residents of those homes, but often absentee or corporate landlords. That is a thing. We have a number of housing regulations in place to ensure that renters are kept safe. This also applies when we speak about keeping renters safe to the indoor air pollution, how that should be a top concern. This proposed rule is not a ban on gas stoves. Research proves that improving the energy efficiency of gas stoves and switching to electric stoves completely will save lives, will save money, and will save our environment. The Department of Energy estimates that the updated standards to improve gas stove energy efficiency will save consumers at least $100 million, provide climate benefits of $67 million, and health benefits of $65 million each year. Congress has an obligation to make smart and forward-thinking investments with taxpayer dollars to ensure our future generations are not plagued by illnesses that lawmakers can prevent today. It's important to recognize that gas stoves perpetuate an unsustainable reliance on fossil fuels and can cause significant health issues. We know the Department of Energy's proposed rule and new efficiency standards will reduce both the negative climate and negative health impacts. The Department of Energy policy would keep our communities safe. So it's no surprise the Republicans are against it. Republicans are consistently against regulations that maintain workplace safety standards, enact gun control to keep our children safe in schools, and allow access to reproductive care. These standards are not a ban on gas stoves, but a way to move the nation forward and reduce health and climate risks to people and our planet while giving consumers more information and more options. Gas stoves have long been linked to serious health hazards, especially in children who grow up in homes with gas stoves. According to the Scientific American, scientists have long known that gas stoves emit pollutants that irritate human airways and can cause or exacerbate respiratory problems. We have the tools and the technology to address these issues definitively within the timeline DOE set forth. 3 years to allow manufacturers to produce more energy-efficient stoves is being generous. The real work comes in communicating with folks at home and urging them to consider the necessary changes, making these changes to keep their household and their family safe, and working with the administration to ensure every single family has access to safe, effective, and affordable appliances. This proposed rule is not a ban on gas stoves. As ranking member of this subcommittee, I know that the work starts today. I implore my colleagues to join Democrats in the serious work of helping keep our communities safe and informed, rather than partaking in the unserious work of sensationalizing safety standards by DOE and misconstruing the science and misconstruing the facts. Thank you, and I yield back. St. Louis and I are here today to present the facts about gas stoves and the hazard they pose on our environment and our health. I think about, my colleague says he likes gas stoves. I like gas stoves. We all like gas stoves. Seatbelts work too, because there are standards put in place to keep people safe. This is a standard. This is we're talking about keeping people safe, and I like people to be alive, not necessarily what looks like a way to weaponize or to politicize an appliance. Let's keep people safe. So scientific research has proven there is a direct connection between gas stoves and, let's just take childhood asthma, finding that gas stoves are linked to 1 in 8 childhood asthma cases. These findings are especially concerning, considering that asthma disproportionately affects Black and brown communities, like whole communities of people, humans. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 13.4% of Black children have asthma, while only 7.8% of white children have asthma. New mothers heating up bottles or making pancakes could be poisoning their children without their knowledge. We want to keep them safe. This evidence linking gas stove emissions to negative health outcomes, it continues to grow. Gas stoves rely on natural gas or methane as a fuel source, which affects the climate both as fossil fuel source and as a greenhouse gas itself. So, Mr. Delasky, how does using natural gas as a fuel source contribute to the climate crisis?
Burning natural gas in our homes and in our power plants is a significant contributor to climate change emissions, and it's also a significant contributor to air quality challenges and problems indoors and outdoors. And in making our stoves more efficient would reduce combustion and reduce the emissions coming from our stoves.
Okay, Mr. Delasky, would improving the efficiency of gas stoves, would that help reduce the impact on the climate crisis?
Absolutely. Improving the efficiency of our gas stoves would help.
I wholeheartedly agree. A 2022 study by Stanford scientists found that annual methane emissions from all gas stoves in the United States, in those homes, have a climate impact comparable to the annual carbon dioxide emissions of 500,000 cars, with more than 3/4 of methane emissions originating while the gas stoves were not even in use. So, Mr. Delasky, what actions can manufacturers, can consumers, and regulators take to prevent the vast amounts of methane leakage from gas stoves?
One of the steps that we can take is for the Department of Energy to set the first ever efficiency standards for gas stoves. We now, for the first time, have a way of measuring relative efficiency and to ask manufacturers to make the investments to make their gas stoves that they sell more energy efficient, reducing their emissions.
One more question for you. What pollutants do gas stoves emit that are so harmful to human respiratory systems?
I'm not an expert in the various emissions that are coming out of gas stoves. I would point you to comments filed by the American Lung Association, as well as a number of nurses organizations and other public health advocates to the Department of Energy in the gas stove docket, where they lay out some of the problems for indoor air quality and for ambient air quality. They're the experts, and I point you to that American Lung Association. They support the gas stove standard and are vocally supporting it.
Well, I'll just add, like nitrogen dioxide, which is known to irritate the human respiratory system. And as a nurse, I've seen it all too often, the effects. Further research we know is warranted In the meantime, experts suggest several actions businesses and families can take to reduce the health risks associated with gas stoves. These include opening a window, using an exhaust hood, installing carbon monoxide detectors, and making the transition to electric stoves. Everyone should have the necessary information about their household goods to determine what is best for them, particularly their stoves. Thank you, and I yield back.